무궁화 꽃이 피었어.
I am Kelly, and this is The Woman Condemned, where we talk about women on death row and those serving life. Today, though, we're talking about filicide. Experts say it's always caused by a break in reality. I believe it's so shocking because it goes against everything we know as humans, especially women, at least in American culture. So settle in. These stories about moms who commit the ultimate evil show us the real side of postpartum. Liliana Carrillo was charged in April 2021 for what she did to her three children, Terry, Sierra, and Joanna. She was 30 years old and pled not guilty. According to police, she took the lives of her three children on April 10th in an apartment in Reseda, California. Then she left the scene, but they found her very soon after in Tulare County. The children's father, Eric Denton, was fighting for custody at the time. He told court he was seeking custody because Liliana had become delusional. She felt that she was completely responsible for the coronavirus epidemic, and the small California town where she lived was a giant ring of people who stole children and sold them to buyers in other countries. Liliana was Denton's Uber driver. That's how they met. They struck up a conversation, hit it off, went out on a date, fell in love. Court records do show that she had trouble with postpartum depression after her second child, and she did seek help, but did not stick with it. She started claiming that her husband was hurting the children and she wanted sole custody. But when the children were examined, there was no harm found to be done to any of them. Instead of allowing Denton to visit with his children the next day, she put them in the bathtub and took them out of this world. She fled the scene, but then her mother came over to check on her and found the children. She told authorities that she planned to take her own life. She was going to drive off a cliff. But when her car got stuck in a ditch and a couple stopped to help her, she stole their car and took off in it. It didn't take long for the police to catch up to her. She was 200 miles from the apartment, and they took her into custody. She pled not guilty, but she did confess, so we'll see. Then we have Elena Guti, the New Jersey mom, who called 911 for the injury she received on her hand after using a kitchen instrument to take her son out of this world. When police arrived to the apartment, they opened the door to find her standing there with bloody hands. The police searched her home and found her son in bed. And what may be the most horrifying of all of these stories is the story of Gabriel Fernandez, which is also a Netflix documentary now. Pearl Fernandez and her boyfriend caused the demise of her son by systematically beating, starving, and locking him away in a cupboard because they claimed his sexual orientation was not what they prefer. She was sentenced to a term of life without parole, and he was given a much stricter sentence of death. Gabriel had been living with Pearl and her boyfriend Isaro Aguirre for 8 months. It was in May of 2013 that Pearl called emergency services and reported that her son was not breathing. Police found him with obvious and severe injuries, but when they took him to the hospital, he passed away 2 days later. The reports cite blunt force trauma and malnutrition as the main causes. In 2021, Pearl was denied a new sentencing hearing. She wanted it because of changes in the state law, but they denied it, and Asura is still waiting his automatic appeal to his capital punishment sentence. Malika Bennett and her mama, Tammy Moffett, both were arrested for what they did to Malika's daughter, Majelic. They called her Jelly. Police got a tip that she had not been seen for several months, and more than one person thought foul play was suspected. Bennett was already in trouble with police. She had a pending case against her from leaving her other kids home alone for more than a day at a time. They had been called to Bennett's home 77 times in 2020 for all kind of disturbances. And Majelic had only lived with her mom for a month before she disappeared. Once the police were alerted to her disappearance, they started searching for her. And when nothing turned up, they went to the grandmama's house, Tammy Moffett. That's where they found Majelic's remains. Another one of Malika's children said that what had happened was they made Majelic stand up in the utility room, laundry room, for 3 days without a break for having a mess in her pants. On the third day, she fell out and hit her head, and her mother put her in the trunk of the car until she started to smell. And then Malika made her oldest daughter dig a hole and bury her youngest. On to Yui Inuo. She denied charges that she harmed her 2 children with a meat cleaver in May of 2021. She went to a Tempe police station and told the officers that she was hearing voices that told her to harm her kids, is what the official documents say. She waited outside until an officer appeared, and then she rushed over to tell him this weird, bizarre message. Investigators called her husband, who explained that they were separated and they argue over money because she wanted to return to Japan. He said she had been threatening him with a kitchen blade, so he'd been sleeping in his car, but he never thought that she would do anything to the kids. The cops did notice splatter on her shoes and tiny cuts on her hands, so they went to her house, and that's where they found her 2 children. Mia and Kai, savaged, nearly decapitated. It leaves us with a special kind of terror when a mom does something like that, because it's something that most of us can't fathom. How big a role do you think postpartum really plays in these? And if it's not postpartum, what is it? Let me know down here. Thanks for tuning in, and please like and subscribe.